Hey, Mitch Tram here. We're going to talk about this Lyfe Tyme barbecue pit here. Lyfe Tyme is a pit manufacturer out of Uvalde, Texas. They've been making these pits for a long time, I'm going to say 20, 30 years, something like that. And they are very, very well made pits. I've had mine about 2 years, and overall, I really like this pit. Let's just talk a little bit about it. I'm going to tell you what I like about it and what I don't like about it. A little bit about the dimensions of it and just, its performance overall. Then we're going to fire the pit up, and I'm going to show you what the temperature is on the top grate and the bottom grate, both on the left and right side, as compared to the temperature on the gauge. So let's get going. All right, looking at this pit, it is 40 inches across and 20 inches wide on the main chamber. And then on the firebox, it is 20 inches by 20 inches. And actually, when I measure it, mine is 21 inches wide and 20 inches across. It has 2 doors on it. Go ahead and open these up. And inside, we have 2 grates like this on the bottom and 1 grate on the top. Now, these grates are fine for cooking. They hold the meat well. No complaints as far as cooking. However, from a cleaning perspective or removing them, I wish that they slid out. You see on some pits, you just slide them out the front like this. I wish they did that on this pit. They're kind of difficult to get out. So in order to get these grates out, you first have to remove this grate, and then you still have to kind of finagle them out. They don't come out easily. So they fit really well, but they are kind of a challenge to get out. So that's one thing that I could say, I wish was better. I do like this rack right here, or this shelf, being made out of metal as opposed to wood. It's a really nice touch. I like the metal instead of the wood. I've had pits with the wood on it. Wood deteriorates. Sometimes if you get your pit too hot, it'll burn along the edges here as well. So I like the metal grate or shelf. Now, when I close this down, we do have these wood handles here, which feel really nice to lift the chambers up or the doors up with. What I don't like about them is that they're wood, and you do have to take real good care of them. Every season, I have to sand them down a little bit, restain them, and then refinish them. And, probably my fault for not keeping my pit covered, which, if I kept my pit covered all the time, I probably wouldn't have that problem. So a little bit of my own fault. But I do like the feel of them better than those metal springs. And if, they ever deteriorate, you could just replace them with the metal springs. Here's your temperature gauge, and this is just threaded, so you can just unscrew your temperature gauge. And when you buy this, it actually won't have a temp gauge. I've got 2 of these. I've got a this one right here is a river country gauge, and then I've also got one of the true temp ones. And the reason I did that is I noticed a difference in the temperature at grate level for this gauge versus when I put a digital probe on. And that's something I'm going to show you guys in a bit. Is this temperature gauge has a different reading than you do on the top rack and on the bottom rack, so as well as on the right and left side. So I just want to show you what that temperature difference is, just so you're aware. And using those digital gauges is a great way to make sure that you are cooking at the temp you want to at the grate level. And I will show you that when we fire this thing up in a bit. The stack itself has a baffle on it, so you can leave it wide open or you can choke it if you like. It's also nice, you can keep that closed all the time when you're not using it, so you don't get water and leaves and other debris in there. Down here is where you have your drain on the bottom of the pit. Now the drain itself, I wish it had a valve on it. That's another thing that I think could be an improvement, and I'm really thinking about just cutting this off, getting my tap and die set, threading that up, and putting a valve on here. And it's not that big a deal. Your grease just drains while you're cooking, and you have to, watch and make sure your grease trap doesn't overfill. My biggest issue is I have a lab and she loves to check the grease trap. So I have to watch and make sure she's not drinking grease out of there. So if I had that valve, I wouldn't have to worry about that. I could drain it, close it back up, and then drain it next time I needed to. It does have a handle on the front here to lift and move it. It is really, really heavy. All right, let's look at the smoker box here. So the smoker box also has this nice shelf here. It has a warmer on top and the wooden handle as well. When you open the smoker box, you'll see that down at the bottom you have a grate to put your fuel on, whether that fuel be charcoal or wood. You also have a cooking grate that goes in here. And one of the things I did to my cooking grate is it had a little nub sticking off right here, which made it incredibly difficult to get out of here. So I just cut that off and now my grate comes out super easy, which is great. The other thing that this pit has is a baffle. And you can see that baffle right here. Baffle is really great for when you need to cut the temp down a little bit. You can close it all the way, or you can just partially close it. So this is great when you get, too much fire in here. Instead of having to open up the top, you can just close the baffle down and, decrease the heat in the main chamber, which is really nice. Over on the side, we have our access to the firebox. And quite honestly, this is the way you should be putting your wood in the firebox. You shouldn't be opening the main chamber. You lose a lot of heat when, not the main chamber, the firebox. You shouldn't be opening the firebox to put wood in. You should be putting it in through the side here so you don't lose that heat by opening up the top lid. And of course it has a latch on it, latches down. And you have your baffle, so you can decide how much airflow you want to allow. So setting this and setting the baffle on your smokestack, you can choose how much flow you're having through the pit. All right, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna fire this thing up, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna take a look at what the grate temperatures are on the right and left side, both on top and bottom. And we're gonna run the pit at 250 on this gauge so we can kind of see what the deltas are between the temps. All right, guys, be back in just a bit. All right, everybody, now we're back. So we're on this first chamber here, and we're at 250 on that chamber. The top probe, or probe number 1, is 315 degrees. That's at the top of the pit on that top rack. The second probe is at grate level on the bottom rack, and it's at 241. So there's a big difference between the heat on the main rack and the heat on that upper rack. Now let me just pull this open so you can see where I have those probes. So this probe right here is the one reading 325, right? And then this one right here is reading about 235, 240 when we show the analog gauge up here at about 250. Now temperature dropped a little bit because we did open the compartment, but just wanted to give you that information there and give you that idea of how this pit really runs as far as the racks are concerned. So we're on the far chamber. I'm going to move these probes over to the chamber that's closest to the firebox, and we'll see the temperature difference there. All right, now we're at about 250 again, and we're on the second chamber. So 250 on the analog gauge, and then probe number 1 is at 313, that's on the upper rack, and probe number 2 is 387, and that's on the lower rack. So just giving you an idea, once again, we're just slightly above 250, and you can see there's a pretty huge difference. I'm gonna post a graphic of this. Some final thoughts on our Lyfe Tyme smoker. So the temperature, you notice, does vary quite a bit between the chambers and the upper and lower racks. And the smoker only comes with the single gauge. So, I would recommend adding a secondary gauge or using your digital probe so you can really understand a little bit better about the temperature within your pit. I'm probably going to drill a hole in mine and add a second gauge as well. Overall, the pit holds temp very well. I'm very happy with it. The firebox is great as well. It's not a super hungry pit as far as fuel consumption. I can maintain that 250 degree temp just by putting on a small chunk of wood. I chunk my wood up like this every 30, 45 minutes, something like that. I can keep that 250 temp over on the far chamber pretty steady just by feeding it that one piece of wood, like I said, every 30, 45 minutes, typically, something like that. Overall, like I said, really great pit. The few things that I would change, like I said, I would add a temp gauge over here. I would like to see on the drain, I would like to see a valve. I think that would be awesome. And then the final thing, I wish, like I said, the racks were easier to remove. Not that they're super difficult, not that you have to take them out all the time, but it'd be nice if they were easier to remove. Overall though, I'm happy with the pit. This is Mitch Tram. Leave me some comments. Subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think. Take it easy, guys.